back in session. I've jumped around so much now. Under new business, the grant for school resource officers. Sheriff, you prepared to give that in 10 minutes? Just present it.
Come here and tell about it. She did a good job. Y'all have I could have got that lady a while ago to come to explain it to you. She wouldn't have had any arguments from me.
Amazing, isn't it?
She looks a lot better than you do,
That's
Sheriff.
That's the first time I've seen y'all stumped in a long time. Okay. Appreciate being able to come before you this morning. I also have Mr. Chris Barnes with me. We'll do a PowerPoint quickly if you can. You know, as you know, the Sheriff's Office does currently have resource officers. We have 8, and 7 of them are in the high schools right now. It is funded partially by the state, the salaries are funded by the state and the school board. Of course, that doesn't include the other things that you asked. Does it include cars, uniforms? No, it does not include that. But we have those school resource officers in our high schools. We have one that does roam right now. We also, you know, during the Sandy Hook incident, not to mention recently the New Mexico incident with school shootings. Of course, we all remember Columbine. And during those times there, I got a lot of calls from the parents concerned about the safety of children. What was the sheriff doing? What I'm going to do? And we developed a plan where we took retired officers, had other places here, and put 3 of them working in the elementary and middle schools, roaming, part-time, only 20 hours a week. That is one thing we did to help combat this. Today I'm coming before you because Mr. Chris Barnes has worked diligently. He's the head of security at our public school administration. He's worked diligently on a grant. This grant will provide 3 deputies, and these deputies will only work the elementary and middle schools. They'll be roaming full time. That'll be what additional we got. This is a matching grant. The school is going to match the grant. Therefore, the county does not have to put up tax dollars for that grant. Commissioners. It is good for 2 years. And of course, I do foresee a grant such as this continuing as it has with the school resource officers over the years, because that's a grant also. And I do see it continuing, and a lot of people ask, I know. I realize there'll be a number of questions. I'm going to try to get that through with for you and ask them. You know, it's good for 2 years. The first question, well, what happens after 2 years? Well, you got 2 choices, folks. The county's growing. And you can either pick these deputies up if the grant plays out. You, the county commissioner, can pick these deputies up and will pay their salaries. And they'll be elsewhere, maybe not in school. Or school can pick them up. Or the next thing is, you can lay them off. And I know people say, well, that's 2 years. Can you tell us what happened? I can't tell you what 2 years will be. I can tell you what I think it'll be. I don't know if this whole world will be here in 2 years. I'm sure Commissioner Daughtry has people to go buy modular homes from him. And I imagine when somebody asks him, well, if I lose my job in 2 years, what you going to do? He's going to say, I'm going to come get that modular home from you. You know, we just heard recently a gentleman a while ago, speak about the BRAC Commission, ways to enhance the community. I've heard over and over things we need to do to enhance our community and attract new businesses. And to me, what better way to show people coming to this county that we are concerned about the children, the welfare of the children in school. What better way to show that we are protecting and providing security to our children? To me, this is a good deal, and I feel that we need to do this. And you know, that's something up to you to tell them. We need to move on quickly on this project. I know the other question is, where did the school is going to pick up this funding? Go ahead and answer that question. Where did the school get the funds? The same place that everybody gets funding, that funds whatever project the county needs, whether it's some cars, no one makes this sort of thing, but video system, radio system, on and on system, the same place. the taxpayer's pocketbook. That's exactly where it comes, trickles right on down to. It is coming from the schools, but I imagine that the source did originate from county tax dollars. And with that being said, I'm gonna let Mr. Chris Barnes continue on. I will sit down. Thank you.
Thank you,
If
Sheriff.
you have any questions. All right.
Thanks, Sheriff. Thank you, Commissioners. As the Sheriff said, my name is Chris Barnes. I'm Security Coordinator for the school district. With the increased threats and everything facing schools today, North Carolina Department of Public Instruction has come out with a grant, and they've sent it statewide. And basically what it is, it's the state will pick up 2/3 of the officers' salaries, and the school board have to pick up the 1/3. I do speak fast. If I start going too fast, just let me know. What we applied for were 4 officers, 1 in the city, which Goldsboro, the chief is tonight going to be presenting that to the city council, and then 3 for the county. There's 21 total schools that they'll be covering. What we're supposed to get from DPI is $163,587 for these 4 officers and deputies, and the school system will pick up $81,793 of it. That's when we go for a full year. Because this school year has already started, the school system for the 5 remaining months of this school year would be $35,126 the school system will pay for, and we'll collect $70,253 from the state. Like the sheriff said, there's no guarantee that this grant will be around, but also the school resource officer grant has been in place for a long time and it's not gone away, so hopefully this one will stick around as well. That's it. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Barnes? Any questions for the sheriff?
Thank y'all very much.
Thank you.
This is an action item. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Cromartie?
I move that we approve.
I have a motion on the floor. The comments, Mr. Pate.
I was going to ask, do we not have this to be contingent on the Board of Education voting this in as well? Because they haven't ruled on it either, have
They already have the money, I understand.
they? But do they not have to, they have to vote on it too? I thought that came
What
up.
we came to, what we're doing is we're presenting it to you, and we wanted to make you aware of it because we have to make sure that we can get the personnel before we can do it. And so that's why we come to the sheriff, and that's why we went to the police chief in the city. The school board has already been made aware of this. We already have the funds delivered from the state, but we just have to get your approval as far as hiring the 3 officers from the county. And if you all say that you'll do it, then our school board's going to vote on it at the next meeting. But they've already been made aware of all this.
I think the motion was to allow the sheriff to hire 3 people subject to the funds being received.
Right.
Thanks, sir.
Is that appropriate? Have a motion on the floor. Any other comments or questions?
Yes, sir.
Mr. King?
In reference to, it's not for you.
I'm
It's
sorry.
just a comment. It's a comment. First of all, as I've told Sheriff Bizzle over in Johnston counties, we've got the best sheriff's department here in Wayne County, second to none, and we'll put our deputies and our sheriff and staff up against Sheriff Bizzle's at any time. And so this is being viewed by him, I'm sure, this morning. So just let him know that we've got the best. And we're going to continue to have the best and fund the best. But my question, or my concern, is like any strong conservative, knowing grants and how they are manipulated through the system of government, is that they're always put out there to entice local governments to get on board and to sustain it year after year after year after the bureaucrats have put together something politically. And what we are seeing here today is the same as we've always seen it, is that they put out grants to establish some program. And I'm not picking on this program as being a bad program. I'm just specifically the process of sustaining funds going forward for the taxpayers of the county. In this particular case, it's Wayne County. As we've seen this morning, where the Board of Education and the county commissioners are collaborating to move forward in building its schools and enhancing education in Wayne County, we're also seeing that the ADM funds have been cut completely, and something that the previous board banked on for the next 5 to 10 years. The lottery funds already we're starting to see those fundings on an annual basis, and it's the same way here. So I'm suggesting to my fellow commissioners is that as we pass this today, that we understand going forward that 2 and 3 years down the road, as the Board of Education wants us to help them sustain what we have seen this morning in a great presentation, is that we are knowledgeable of the fact that these do exist. And as we move forward, whether it's through sales tax, whether it's through property tax increases, through sustaining programs in this county, requires that we look at every, as one commissioner said, that we don't leave any stone unturned. No, we don't want anything to happen in Wayne County in our schools, and anything that we can do to prevent that. We will do all we can, and I support this, but going forward, understanding that we have to continue sustaining, and the people of the county have to understand the purpose. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Darty?
just to piggyback on that a little bit, and that's my concern as well, and that is a program as laudable as this is comes about, and the sheriff mentioned it, and that is at the end of the 2 years, if the grant is not renewed, then you've got a choice to make. And that's a tough choice to make in 2 years if this grant is not renewed, because then we're faced with a very tough choice in regards to funding it or not funding it. And even though I greatly want to take advantage of that, I am concerned about going in 2 years as to whether or not we are going to have to add that to a cost to the local taxpayer. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Mayor?
I just want to ask a question. The existing resource officers we have,
Yes, sir.
is that through a grant? Who's paying for these?
That is, through the governor, does furnish that grant. I know it comes from federal funding. The governor does hand it down to the state then gives it to the school, then we contract with the schools on that. And as he said, that school resource officer program, as long as I've been sheriff, going on 20 years, has been in existence. They've never pulled it back. It's been going on for that long.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else? A motion on the floor. Pleasure to the board. Favor, show, sign of right hand. Motion carries unanimous. Thank you, Sheriff. All right.
That one take gear off.
It's time.
Let's go to lunch.
It's time. See you back in a little while. Sorry, Steve.
Enjoy lunch.
If you'd
Quick.
announce that you're recessing to go to the Farm Bureau.
Okay, before we recess quickly though, due to the inclement weather, Marcia's scheduled to be in school for the rest of the week. We're going to excuse her at lunchtime, and Cindy will be filling in for her this afternoon so she can go ahead and get to her destination before the weather moves in. Everybody okay with that?
We'll let you get that.
I will put the handouts for your afternoon sessions at
1:30? You think you'll be back by 1:30?
Yes. Hopefully, yes.
Right.
We're in recess.
Recess to
Have a motion that we go in recess. All in favor, show right hand.
Process, we're asking to apply for the grant. This is not to get the grant, it's an application process. Now, and the reason I'm here before you, and I know you wonder why is the amount of police officer here. This DW task force grant cannot come about unless the sheriff is involved. Being the sheriff, I have to be involved because it is a multi-agency task force. Without me, it won't exist. So not only will y'all have to talk about us applying for this grant, give us permission to apply for the grant, also the other entities, council boards will be involved, such as Goldsboro, Mount Olive, and I'm not sure what other towns will be. They'll have to do the same. That does not say you are say that we are gonna accept the grant, whatever, this just say we're applying for it, and then if we get it, we'll come back to the table, and we decide if this is where we want to go forward with. I was interested in some of the things about the DWI grant, that Mr. Jordan was able to find out, but a lot of people didn't realize this. Now, I know we're on the list top here and the top there, and some on the bottom of the list. But what I did not realize that Wayne County is ranked 8th on the list of out of 100 counties. And unfortunately, that's for the fatalities of DWI deaths on our highways. We're number 8. And that's related to alcohol. And I also tell you to keep in mind that, you know, in the future, we already got 795, and we will have Highway 70 East. And a lot of people say, well, the first thing is, well, why are we doing a DWI task force when we have the highway patrol? Are we trying to take the place of them? The Highway Patrol and troopers do a great, fantastic job for us, but they're overloaded also. That's why the governor came up with this plan to have a multi-jurisdictional task force. Where actually we'll be doing the DWI task force. There is a downside to it. I know you're asked that. What are these deputies doing if you were to get the grant? They are limited what they can do, and that will be, they'll be focusing on traffic, focusing on DWI traffic task force. That doesn't mean that they can't answer a call for assistance, but their primary goal is for that. As stated, when the reason we come before you now is because this grant application process has got to be done by January the 31st.
Actually, they extended it last week to February 14th.
By February 14th. We need to give them an answer or whatever, send in our application process. But it doesn't connect us or tie us to it. Later we'll have to come back and say, you know what? Either Fremont or rest of them said we're not involved in it, or Goldsboro said we don't want to get involved in it. And maybe y'all said we don't want to get involved in it. But that is at this, even if they do accept the grant. But at this point in time, this is the application process only. And at this time, I'm gonna let Captain Mazingo and Corporal Jarman give you a little bit of on this PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you, gentlemen. As the sheriff spoke out, this is a governor's highway safety program. It's totally funded by the state. They receive their money from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Then they send it downhill up to local governments. It's endorsed by Governor Pat McCrory. It's been in existence for many years. If you go to the next slide. It's got to be a multi-agency task force. In order to be a multi-agency, it has to have at least 3 agencies. We spoke with all the agencies in Wayne County, and we've got commitments from Sheriff Wenders with 3 deputies, Golden Police Department with 2 officers, and Mount Police Department with 1. Chief Rhodes and Chief Stewart have both agreed that they would like to get to be a part of this task force. Why Wayne County? It's pretty simple. The sheriff just told you we rate 8th in the state in motor vehicle crashes. The top 25 counties are the only 25 counties that are really considered for this grant. So unfortunately, we're in that top 25 at 8th. There again, it says top 25 focus county for both impaired driving fatalities per capita and unrestrained motorists. The city of Goldsboro is the 10th deadliest city in the entire state of North Carolina. So the need's there. This is kind of hard to see. Basically what it's showing you is your alcohol-related deaths from 2008 to 2012. But the most important part to look at, if you scroll down to about middle way of the page where it says county ranking, you can see that in 2008, Wayne County ranked 29th, which put us outside the top 25. In 2009, we were 29th again. 2010, we went to 22. 2011, we went to 10th. And in 2012, we were 8th. So from 2009 to 2012, the deaths in Wayne County have really risen due to motor vehicle accidents involving alcohol and just regular accidents. There again, this is the same stat that I just told you about, 29. Of course, that was got, did I read it wrong on the first one? 29, 22, 10, and 8. There's the same stat I just showed you a minute ago where Goldsboro is ranked 10th. It's kind of blurry. The funding, I know that's the big part. That's what we're here to, in front of you for. is this is a reimbursement grant only. So basically, any money spent, the county would pay out, they'd send in for reimbursement and get reimbursed. There's your cost assumption. The first year, it's 100% funding. When I say 100%, that pays the salary of the deputy, pays for the vehicle he's gonna drive, the computer, the camera that goes in the car, everything that he wears from his head to his toes. The second year, it drops to 85%, and the county picks up 15. In the third year, 75 and 25, and in the fourth year, 50 and 50. And on the fifth year, the county assumes all of the responsibility for the funding, and it has to run in the fifth year. The hope is, at the end of the fifth year, that Wayne County, the city of Goldsboro, the town of Mount Olive could afford to keep this DWI task force funded and keep it going. This is basically seed money to help us get it started and continue it afterwards. Our goal would be that at the end of the fifth year, we would be out of the top 25, which would kind of knock us out for even applying for a grant. And while I'm on there, I'm going to go ahead and talk on that because I know the question is going to be asked. At the end of the fifth year, can we reapply? We cannot reapply for 100% funding. We could make the task force bigger, add more people to it, and it would be 100% funding for them for 5 years. Well, the same scale 1 through 5, but you could not re-up those same people on another grant. Here's basically what the DWI task force would cost. Like I said, the first year, we're basing it on a salary of $35,000, $32,000, and $13,000 in fringe benefits. It pays his salary. In the second year, it shows that that deputy's going to cost you $6,750. Third year, $11,250. Then on the fourth year, $22,500. And of course, on the last year, the fifth year, the county picks up the whole funds. Our goals with the DWI task force will be to reduce impaired driving crashes, reduce impaired driving fatalities, increase use of seat belts, decrease percentage of unstrained motor fatalities, and successfully prosecute offenders of impaired driving. And again, reduce the economic impact, which is astronomical. I wish I could have brought you those figures, but the cost of one wreck and what it costs to work that wreck, replace that vehicle, pay the doctor bills and on is astronomical for every wreck we have in Wayne County.
It's around $18,000 an hour.
For one wreck. And you figure when you put law enforcement, fire, EMS out there handling that wreck, a wrecker driver, somebody to pay for the vehicle and replace the vehicle and pay all the insurance costs, this comes from the state. It's about $18,000 per wreck. We want to do this in two ways. It'll be a two-pronged approach. It'll be enforcement. The first one will be aggressively enforcing impaired driving through checkpoints, saturation patrol, wolf packs, training the additional officers that are not on the task force in detection of impaired driving, concentrating on enforcement efforts where they are needed most. So it'll be your high DWI areas. And then the next thing would be through education. Go ahead and click. Actively educate the public on the effects of impaired driving through the higher school programs. We would go to each high school and sign them all up through the Governor's Highway Safety Program on seat belts and DWI. VIP program, that's taught at the high schools. The fatal vision seminars, the Batmobile presentation, and participation in Safe Kids, as well as other community outreaches. And here's just a few numbers for you to ponder. We've talked about most of these. We're ranked 8th for most deadliest county in motor vehicle accidents. Motor vehicle deaths. 24th, on average, 24 citizens will die as a result of a vehicle crash each year in Wayne County. 2.6, a crash occurs in Wayne County every 2.6 hours, and a citizen will be injured in a crash every 5.6 hours, and every 380.9, a citizen in Wayne County will die in a motor vehicle accident. And the way we change the numbers, we put this DWI task force out here and put it to work, and try to reduce our DWIs as well as our traffic fatalities. So that's a brief. And I will say this, the sheriff touched on this a little bit. There's so many different places this can get a snag. All we're asking for is the ability to apply for the grant. We're going to ask for 3 people for the sheriff's office. So you can multiply those numbers by 3 that we just looked at. We may not get it. If we do get it, then we got to come back before y'all as well as the city of Goldsboro and the town of Mount Olive and get their board of commissioners to agree to it and sign the contract. So there's several different points that it could fall. If Goldsboro decided they didn't want to get involved, we've lost our multi-agency jurisdiction because we don't have 3 agencies, so there'll be no need to continue with it. If Mount Olive was to back out, or if Wayne County was to back out. From talking to both chiefs from both departments, I don't think that's gonna happen. I think they're gonna support it. They talked to some of their folks before they came to us and said, yeah, we can get it supported. So what we're asking today basically is, do you feel a need for us to even apply for the grant? That's all we're asking for. We're not asking for you to commit to it, although I would think if you want us to apply for it, that'd be your thought in the future.
Any questions for the sheriff and the officers?
I might as well tread into this, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Doherty?
I recall those numbers. How much per deputy were we talking about over the 5 years? 139?
I'm sorry.
How much per deputy over the 5 years?
The total cost of the project at a $32,000 salary and $13,000 benefits, the total cost of the project would be $225,000 per officer. $139,500 is covered by the government. Each agency will be responsible at the end of 5 years for $85,500.
That's per deputy.
Yep, that's per officer. And if you look right there in the top right corner, each agency in the very first year will receive somewhere around $54,000 in equipment. That's going to be the vehicle, everything to go in the vehicle, the whole nine, everything he needs, sidearm, everything that we take off goes back to the agency, and whatever officers put on there is given everything he could possibly need.
So the bottom, if I'm understanding, the bottom line is the cost over the 5 years per deputy, per agency, Wayne County, in our case, would be $85,500.
That's correct.
So times 3,
Yes, sir.
Yes,
because
sir.
you're requesting 3.
Yes, sir.
And there's no way we can extend the grant
No, sir.
on those deputies.
No, sir. You
Then-
can add 2 more if you wanted to, but those deputies you have to pay for 100%.
Now, the concern, some of the concerns that I would have is, one, I would feel like that the governor would do much better if he would give us some more highway patrolmen to implement that in our county versus burdening the local taxpayer to come forth with those funds. That's number one.
Well, can I-
Because if in fact we are 10th,
Right.
in our area, there's a need there. There's no doubt there's a need there. But to me, it looks like that is more of a function from state government rather than giving a grant with strings attached to it. Because going forward, we would have to pick up the full cost per deputy
Yes, sir.
on the 5th year going forward. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Okay, now, comment.
On that point of the highway patrol, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, I read up a whole lot on this, and if I understood it correctly, they can't have troopers on this grant. Now, this grant has made a state task force that is not made up of troopers, it's made up of officers from all over the state that the governor put together. But they can't use these monies for the highway patrol. I don't know why, but that's the way I understood it when I read it.
What it boils down to is the highway patrol is a state agency, they can't receive state funds.
In a matter of a grant that's
Yeah,
coming from the
they
federal government.
cannot fund the highway patrol through a grant process. Governor Highway Safety only deals with municipalities and county sheriff's departments. There's only, and ALE, well, I'm sorry, not ALE, county ABC. Those are the only ones that can participate. Everybody else can't even get points.
So it's federal dollars passed to the state.
To the state.
State's government, then passed down to the local. But we're down here at the bottom, we're the ones receiving the grant, but we've got to accept it with strings attached.
Yes, sir.
And so there's some question in regards to the strings.
Exactly. I mean, and it is what it is. At the end of the 5 years.
I agree, it is what it
Yeah,
is.
at the end of 5 years, what they're trying to do is get us started on it and hope that the county is in a situation in 5 years from now, the economy's good enough that you pick up the deputies and keep on with the program.
If I could follow up, how confident are you in the results of this task force of reducing these fatalities?
I can tell you this, Guilford, Buncombe, and Forsyth County have all participated in this. Guilford County in their first year alone tripled in DWI arrests and reduced their DWI fatalities by 25% in the very first year.
I can tell you one more thing. At the end of this grant, You know, you're wondering, well, what happens with those people, as we've always said. County would have to pick up deputies. Now, at the end of the grant, so we're not gonna do the grant anymore. But we're gonna have those deputies who have been trained, ready to go, those three, that they put on the road to patrol them for the county and not be on the Highway Patrol Task Force, if that's what we wanted to do. If you chose to do that. So, well, we just don't wanna do the grants anymore, we're gonna do this one-time deal and we're gonna stop right there. And we did that with the COPS grants. But I hope that you will continue to go on with the grant. And I know one of the next questions was gonna be, if that triples the number of arrests, which leads to a double-edged sword, where am I going to put it? I need you to think about it.
Can I answer that question for you right quick,
What was
Sheriff?
the last comment? I'm sorry, I didn't understand you.
If the arrest triple, where are we going to put it?
We got a overcrowding jail problem.
Actually,
We'll address that idea pretty soon, maybe we'll get together on that one, but,
plus you gotta remember too now, Sheriff, on DWIs, they're letting them go on a written promise and a sober adult to carry them home. Very seldom they put one in jail nowadays.
I just want to ask one question. I might have to help Ms. Hope to help out this, but just looking down the scale of the percents, and I just want to back this back through my mind. The first year the state pays full 100%.
Yes, sir.
So then when you add the next year's 15 plus 25 plus the next year's 50, does that add up to 85? All right, and then the fifth year is 100. So over the 5 years, we're paying 190% of the total cost. Is that right? You
Well-
called me Miss Pam.
Let me
So we pay 100% the last year, right?
that's right.
Last year.
So that's the full cost.
And included in that total, it's not, the equipment cost of that you're getting on the front end is not included in the total being picked up, by the grant, right, per year.
Yeah, if you only get a call one time, and I
Right.
know that call's will last you for 5 years.
The
On the
equipment,
front end, they're getting the car and the equipment, and if this is correct, it's $54,000 number like, which is over and above the total, the 139. Is that correct? Is that the way y'all presented it?
yes, ma'am. The $54,000 equipment is gonna be 1 year only. They're gonna give us the car and all the equipment. You wouldn't give a new car to a deputy every year. So that car should last into the life of the grant. At that point, at the end of the grant, you know, if the car needs replaced, it's got to be picked up by the sheriff, just like the employee has to be picked up by the county to keep it going. Now, the one thing I didn't touch on, and this might make you feel a little better, the Governor's Highway Safety Program has a point system, which we already participate in every year. If we assist with a DWI checkpoint through any of the Governor Highway Safety sanctioned booze it and lose it, click it and ticket, save kids, so on and so forth, when we participate, we turn that into the state and we accumulate points. Every year, Wayne County gets anywhere between 3,000 and 5,000 points, which allows us to buy a couple of radars or maybe a couple of sets of stop sticks or whatever we can get from the state for that amount of points. It takes 30,000 points to get a car. With this task force, if we were to participate in everything we possibly could in a year's time, the possibility is there that the task force is going to gain 30,000 points. So there's a possibility that each agency could get a new car from the state that does not have to go to the task force, it goes to the sheriff to do with as he pleases. The possibility's there. If we didn't get but 25 this year, 25,000, we don't have to cash them in, we can go to the next year and add them all together, and in 2 years, you would definitely have enough to get a new car. So you're still gaining points, but it doesn't go to the task force, it goes to the sheriff for him to use the equipment as he pleases.
This one is not about money. I want to ask this question. What methods, just give us a few of them, the methods you are going to go, what's some of the identifying factors that you're going to use to determine who's out there driving impaired?
I'm going to turn this over to him. I've been sitting behind a desk for 2 years. So.
That's good.
The biggest thing is going to be your training of your officers. And the great thing about it is the county already has those resources both within the sheriff's office and in each municipality. Goldsboro's already put their guys through. They actually have a traffic team that's set up. They go through probably 100 hours of training a year just picking up impaired driving. Mount Olive did have a traffic team. It was through a grant. The grant ran out. They were no longer able to facilitate.
what were some of the methods though? Tell me, what were some of the actions that you took? I hear you say you got a what were some of the training specifically? What were some of the things that you did?
Okay, I'll give you a rundown of mine. I am standardized field sobriety certified, and that is where you do a battery of tests with their eyes, their hand-eye coordination, divided attention tests. You use those to select through your impairment. After that, I went through ARIDE training, which is Advanced Roadside Impairment Detection and Enforcement. That deals with no alcohol when it's just drugs that are impairing the body. Then I even took it a step further and became the first person in Mount Olive history to become a drug recognition expert. There's only about 100. They're running the class now, so as of the class, there's about 140 of us in the entire state of North Carolina that are certified as drug recognition experts.
That's after you got him out of the car. That's
Certainly.
after you got him out of the car.
Yeah, are you
Okay,
asking?
I'm talking about what caused you to get him out of the car. You told me what happens after you get out of the car. Now, what I'm trying to find out is, how did you identify him in the first place to make the stop that would cause you to be able to determine that he was impaired?
That would be,
Right.
that would be based solely on the driving.
Based on how he was driving?
Exactly.
Reasonable suspicion,
Yes,
and
sir.
the officer the officer has to have reasonable suspicion. And we're all aware of nowadays that you cannot do profiling, that would be illegal. You
Right.
can't do profiling. But if you're traveling behind a car and your reasonable suspicion is he is weaving outside his lane. Now we're saying now that you can't stop that car because he's weaving a little bit inside the lane, but outside his lane, crossing over the center. That gives the officer the right to stop that car because he's met some of the criteria to make a stop. Even if he sees a person driving without a seatbelt, that does give the criteria to stop him. Because you better have your seatbelt on. Or any other criteria, if you're driving with your license, or your lights off and it's raining, or so forth, or driving with no lights. I stopped one the other day, going home when it was dark and raining, and she was driving on the highway with no lights, didn't realize that she didn't have her lights on. And, but those would be criteria, but she didn't run, she just didn't realize it. Those are the things there you got to look at. That is one thing you have to be very careful of these days. We all know that. That's always coming in profiling. And we're not here to profile anybody in certain areas or whatever. They will have to work in some of the cities. You talked about when you met some of the city council in different areas. They talked about meeting. They want the visibility of some of us all work together, county, enforcement, and some of the towns. But you would have this. More likely, and I'll tell you, you would see the deputy sheriff more likely working now than the police officers. Because you want to stop before they get outside drunk. But we would be working county too. And also you do, which is, you do traffic, checkpoints.
Correct.
And which has a criteria that you've got to write down, keep, and do exactly what it says do.
Yes, sir.
Can't stop I can't stop this car and count to 10 and stop another car and then count to 5 and stop another car. I gotta have a correct pattern. But, those are things that, we know about it, look at. These won't be the first grants I've ever got that were from the state. I've got ones before. I certainly have got the cops grants. And we got 16 officers over the years. That came with no equipment and a lot of paperwork.
And the H team was funded by a grant
The H team was
back
funded
in
by a grant.
1996, and it's still in existence today because it turned out to be such a success.
Like I said, we're here just to ask for application process today.
Mr. Pate.
Question about the grant itself, and you talked about the point system, and that's fine, but most grants that I've ever dealt with in the past have benchmark figures that you have to meet to keep the funding.
Yes, sir.
Are the benchmarks in this particular grant? So, I mean, I feel you'll be successful. You put more manpower on the street, that's gonna result in more arrests, most likely.
Well, let's say-
But there may be some benchmarks that they require that may or may not be reasonable. I don't know. Is that there?
They do not set benchmarks, but they do evaluate it every year. And yes, you're right. We could go the first year and start into the second year, and they evaluate it and say, Wayne County's not doing anything, we're pulling the funding. And that can happen. That's, I'm not gonna cover it up. That's exactly the way it's written. And to be perfectly honest with you, I wouldn't be here speaking to you if I didn't think it'd be a success, because I wouldn't put my name on anything that I don't think I can make work for 5 years. And then, I know that's not a guarantee to anybody, but between myself and the sheriff and the people that are interested in it, You know, the rest are gonna be there. You're gonna see it go down, and I think you'll see Wayne County drop out of the top 25% of motor vehicle crash deaths. And that's the goal.
And tickets are a big deal, you know, you haven't got to write a ticket, you'll want a ticket. But certainly for DWI, you can't give a warning ticket, that nature. But if you stop someone speeding or whatever, they just happen not to do something and they weren't going that fast, you could write a warning ticket or whatever. If you're looking at those criteria, they're not forcing you to write a ticket for every time you stop that car.
I was talking more about the number of deaths. I want us to get us out of the 8th spot. I want to go the other direction.
Mr. Doherty.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we go ahead and allow them to apply for the grant.
I have a motion on the floor. Any other comments? Yes, sir. Mr. King.
Is this specifically for DWI, is drinking? Is that what this whole grant application and this study endorsed by the governor, is it all about alcohol?
It's about driving while impaired and seatbelt use.
I was looking under DWI task force goals.
Yes, sir.
Has anyone talked to the governor or whoever put this together about cell phone use and texting while driving?
Well, let me elaborate on that a little bit. Our main goal will be DWI enforcement, both through alcohol and drugs. It's not just specific alcohol. If they blow a 00 and they're still impaired, we're going to charge them. The statute allows that. But we're also going to focus on seatbelts, speeding, texting while driving, pedestrian fatalities. It's not in here because it doesn't really pertain to the task force, but Wayne County sits in the top 25 out of 100 counties in every category for fatalities, with the exception of pedocyclists. And that's because I haven't seen a lot of people riding a bicycle around. That's more the beach areas. But as far as unrestrained motorists, speeding fatalities, child safety seat fatalities, impaired driving, we sit in the top 25, and that's a little scary out of 100 counties. There's a lot of counties that are a lot bigger and a lot more populated than Wayne County.
And I appreciate all your study and the data that you've just released here, but I've read through all of this, and there was no indication in any of this information about cell phone use and texting while driving. I was just asking, as we move forward into the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th year, as we get the data from, I guess, your arrest or the percentage of crashes. You've certainly got it broken down real well: pedestrian crashes, bicycle crashes, motorcycle crashes, alcohol-related crashes. But there's nothing in here about cell phone use while driving or texting while driving in relation to any of these crashes. And I was just asking, I guess as a commissioner, is that if you follow this grant back and apply for it, if you can look in there, and if it's not in there, maybe suggest to those that are putting this together that you want to find out for this commissioner, for Wayne County, if we in 5 years from now know specifically getting away from the alcohol use and the seatbelt use, and find out if we've got something that pertains to texting and cell phone use.
A lot of that falls back on texting while driving is a pretty recent thing. There's not a whole lot of studies, and it's really actually very tough to enforce that. While we were at the symposium last week in Concord, they had a class based on that. The first case that somebody ever got found guilty for texting while driving. So it's a very new thing. That's why it's not really in the studies. This particularly pertains to DWI task force. Now, there are available grants to the state, same program, Governor Highway Safety, available for traffic task force. And that's where we would go back at the end of 5 years and say, okay, we've taken down our numbers in impaired driving. We've made this a safer place for our citizens. Now we've got this phenomenon of people texting while driving and causing fatalities. What can we do? Can we come and transform out of this DWI task force, and now we're looking at more strictly just traffic?
And I understand what you asked about the texting, and it is a problem. I see it all the time when people drive. You can stop somebody because it is against the law, texting and driving, and you can write a citation if you catch them, but there's a lot of restrictions in that. Another thing is if you have a crash fatality, we don't have implied things in our implied consents on a cell phone. That way we'll be getting into people's private affairs or whatever. We have the capability at our office, because I bought that equipment through the drug money, but we'd have to have a search warrant to get that cell phone and go through that cell phone and find the last conversation they'd had. We can do it, but you gotta have that reasonable suspicion, or proper cause, actually get that search warrant. Then somebody see them or whatever. You know, the state had to imply consent if you have a wreck and nobody else involved, that you can look at it, but I doubt they're ever gonna do that.
Thank you. We would enforce any texting that we saw as part of the
Okay.
task force.
Sure. Just not in here in anything I was reading, so just thought I'd ask.
Thank you. Mr. Camardi.
I want to ask one last quick question. Mount Olive will get one, and then the Goldsboro City we're gonna get two, and then the county as a whole is gonna get 3. This is my question, Sheriff. If I know you've probably done the statistics, would y'all be sort of flexing those deputies where the highest rate has been already determined? I mean, if
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Most of the time, as the sheriff mentioned, the task force will probably be working in the city limits of Goldsboro, Mount Olive, Fremont, and Pikeville for the majority of the time. They are going to go out into the county in areas, excuse me, we know we have a lot of driving DWI accidents and work in those areas too. But you got to remember, Wayne County's a dry county. So if a person's going to go to drink, where are they going? They're going to the city limits or somewhere where they can buy it. So if we catch them in the city, we're still stopping them before they get back out to the county. So you're still making the same impact by working in the city as opposed to the county. You know, if you want to catch a dog, you go to where the dogs are. So that's what we were doing. We're going.
And that 8%, that number 8 is alarming. There've been some horrible accidents. There's been some horrible accidents. Not that far from it, just a horrible accident. So let me say thank you for working on it, Greg.
Any other questions? Have a motion on the floor? All in favor, raise your right hand.
Thank you, sir.
Grant. Thank y'all. All right, we're still jumping around. I think we had service on aging in time for 2 o'clock, and it's 2:30, so let's get that one next. Be number 5 on your, under unfinished business.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for giving me this time. I also want to thank my supporters. I have some heavy hitters here. Hermanita Harris is our Regional Area Advisory Committee member. We have Peggy Seegers, a senior Tar Heel legislator. Behind Peggy is Brownie Doss from Wages. She's on my board. Tanya Cedars, Executive Director of the Area Agency on Aging. And Lynn, I consider her a supporter also, as I support her in her efforts. And Ruth Hoffman, who is chairman of our board. So thank you all for coming and supporting. I'm here to address you about the gateway rate change and explain how it's impacting services on aging, and probably asking for your generosity. But currently, the senior center pays a set rate per rider. It's $8.50 per person, and it can fluctuate a little bit depending on the cost of gas, but we'll go with $8.50 for comparison. As of February 1, the Gateway Board voted to change that to a per mile basis for the charge. So it will be $3.82 per mile, depending on where the senior is and where you're taking them to. So we did a cost comparison, and I based it on my September and October bills. At the old rate, my monthly cost was about $7,462 a month. At this new rate, based on per miles, it would go up to $19,214 per month. So the new rate was 256% greater than what I'm currently paying. Now, later on through my other statistics, you'll see that's a little bit lower because Gateway is going to allow us an ADA rate of $2 for seniors who qualify. So I looked at my amount of money. Our transportation funding is $114,062 for the fiscal year 13 to 14, and that is block grant money with the county match. So if you divide that by the 19,000, that gives me about 6 months worth of transportation. There's EdTap, which is another fund of money. I wrote down $29,000. The actual current statistic is $22,000, and that'll cover about 1 month. So what that says is for fiscal year 14 to 15, I would have to cut the rides by about 50% or get about 50% more funding, the $114,000. For the rest of this year, if the new rate starts in February, I would need the 19,000 times 5, which is 96,000. I predict I'd have about 51,000 left in February after paying my other bills, so I would need about $45,000 to continue transportation without cutting rides. So what type of rides does Services on Aging provide? We do what's known as medical rides, and that is taking seniors to dialysis, taking them to physical therapy, taking them to the doctor's appointment. We also take them to grocery shopping through Walmart. And then we have transportation to the meal sites, and that is the Senior Center and Mount Olive Meal Site. We're what's known as a congregate meal site for Wages. Wages prepares the meal. They serve it at the Senior Center for the seniors. Then we have a very limited number of rides for such things like Title V employment, which is senior employment, volunteering, or special events. Sometimes we would transport seniors to the dances, but those rides altogether are 1% of all rides. So what we've done so far to stay within budget, we identified 3 riders who have other access to transportation, so they are no longer receiving any transportation. We used to allow the seniors 2 grocery shopping trips per month. We have now cut that down to 1. We have eliminated the rides for Title V employment, for volunteering, for special events. In other words, the only general transportation that we are going to offer would be to a meal site. Medical rides we have not limited, because how do you limit if somebody needs transportation to dialysis? You cannot turn them down. So if you turn over your sheets. So the cuts that I've talked about are only going to result in a very small decrease. They're not going to make up the difference of what I need. The majority of my general transportation rides are to the meal sites. So I asked Gateway to convert Tuesday's rides and Friday's rides to the new rate so I could compare what I would be saving, and I have those calculations on another sheet. Before I review that, though, I was also asked to compile some information about how many riders live within the city limits. Well, when we take a new transportation rider, I don't ask them if they live within the city limits, and truthfully, I don't think some of them would know. But I looked at the addresses. A good portion of these seniors live in senior housing, and I know which ones are in the city limits. So to give you an idea, we have about 73 seniors who are signed up for transportation. 24 of those seniors ride the city bus. Now, this was a cost-saving measure, a pilot project that we actually started that saves county money, saves us money, that I purchase passes for the city bus in Goldsboro for 50 cents, and the seniors that live on the bus route can ride that for 50 cents. So that's a bargain, and it's a pilot project. It's saved us money, and we have 24 seniors that get to the senior center and the meal site that way. So that's the 24 there. In terms of the other 49 seniors, the ones that use the vans, 49 of the riders, out of the 49 riders, 11 are from the Mount Olive and Dudley area, so that's 22%. 3 are from the Pikeville area, which is 6%. 1 is from LaGrange, 2%. 25 are in the Goldsboro city limits, which is 51%. And 9 are in Goldsboro, but not considered city limits, which is 18%. My advisory board met to discuss the rate increase in January 14th. They directed me to request the funds from the Wayne County Commissioners to allow us to maintain meal site transportation for the rest of the fiscal year. They have also directed me that if I do not get this additional funding, that I will be cutting rides on Tuesdays and Fridays to the meal sites, to both the Mount Olive Meal Site and the Peggy M. Seeger Senior Center, so in order to stay within our budget. The next sheet I have for you is I did a cost analysis. So when we converted our Tuesday rides, there are 26 riders. Converting the cost of the rides it totaled up to $277.18. And then those ADA rides, those are the ones that if the senior qualifies, it can be a $2 ride, and there were 7 ADA riders. So that gives you a total cost of $291.18. Well, you have to multiply this by 2 because it's round trip, which gives you $582.36, and there are 21 Tuesdays until June 30th. So that total is $12,226. That is to continue Tuesday rides. Friday rides, the same thing, 22 riders. To continue Friday rides would cost $7,542.78. Where this gets complicated, though, is my medical riders. I do not know who my medical riders are going to be. The general riders, I'm not taking any additional new riders. There's a waiting list and people just don't get to come on. But if I have somebody calling me who needs medical transportation, I don't turn them down. So I could have someone calling me from LaGrange that could have a very expensive ride 3 or 4 days a week or something like that. But our medical rides are our priority. From July to August, the cost of my medical rides have increased 50%. So it's hard to predict. I tried to come up with a new rate. As I said here, under a new rate, some clients cost as little as $1.87 per ride, and some are as much as $58.90 per ride. So it's just hard to predict. So I gave you my best guess estimate, which is $3,285 a month. Times 5 is $16,000. Now, I will have $6,000 left in my medical account, so that means I need $9,844 to balance out the additional costs of the medical rides. So I added the Tuesdays, the Fridays, and the additional medical costs, and basically we need $29,613 as my best guess to continue through the end of the year without cutting rides. Does anyone have any questions? You want to write a check?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Bale.
I'd like to place a motion on the floor to approve the additional funding for the rest of the year.
A motion on the floor, any discussion, questions?
I was gonna let somebody else go ahead.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Mayor.
I just have a question. Are you saying if you make, you're suggesting here that if you make some adjustments on Tuesday and Friday?
I'm saying that with the new rate, I know I don't have enough money in my budget to make it through the year, staying within budget. So what I would do and what my board approved doing was stopping transportation to the meal sites on Tuesdays and Fridays as a savings to offset the additional expense.
Okay, I know it was approved, but what do you feel is the far-reaching effects of this,
Oh,
if any?
I think it's terrible. I do not want to cut rides. I think, you're talking not only nutrition, which for some seniors, this is the only hot meal of the day and maybe the only meal of the day that they get. But there's also the social component. We have seniors who have severe depression, seniors with dementia that are struggling to stay on their own. You're also helping the family members who are watching over them. So I strongly advocate to find the funding somehow and continue with the meals.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Bale.
can I amend my own motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'd like to amend my motion to fund the whole thing without the cuts. I think the seniors deserve at least that much, and I think we can afford it.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Doherty.
Here we go. I would say that probably my question would be for the Director of the Transportation, since she's creating this issue. Would it be okay if I ask some questions? Ms. Lamb? I suppose the first question I have, is there any way to have a special rate for our senior citizens? That may solve some of our problems.
Okay, so in terms of the agency rate specific to that?
That's correct. In other words, it appears as if we've got a special rate for the buses at 50 cents for the city buses. Is there any way that we can arrive at a special rate for providing transportation for our senior citizens to get them to the doctor's office and back and forth to the senior center and so forth? Is that possible?
Well, if it's allowable, I did write something up I would like to share if it's permissible. And I think that might address part of the...
If it'll lower our costs, have at it.
Okay, I just wanted to give you some assurances of the steps that we're taking to really try to fix this system, and that all the pieces are finally coming together. And the last part of the equation is the agency rate, across the board. So when I came to you in September of last year, at that time, I outlined my plan to fix a very broken system. I've continued to maintain a strong business focus in making critical changes. I have made the necessary changes quickly in all areas that I have control over. I have aggressively addressed Gateway's infrastructure and operational efficiencies, and I've reduced expenses by approximately $20,000 per month. The last piece of the equation is to address the agency rates. By implementing new scheduling software, I was able to obtain the necessary data to analyze existing rates and was ultimately able to prove what I knew from my first day. The system has been grossly underbilling agencies since at least 2006. Because the system only receives 26% in subsidies, the only way to survive in this business is by billing the paying agencies at the appropriate rate in order to cover the remaining expenses. My governing board approved the necessary rate restructure, and it will be effective February 1st. I want to assure you that the rates are well within industry standard, and systems across the state operate under similar models. I'm sorry, I'm shaking. As I have indicated before, I was able to turn the system around in Johnston County and make it a profitable business and self-sustaining. I know this drastic change is difficult for the contracting agencies, especially in the middle of a budget year. However, it must be noted that we are trying to recover from years of underbilling, and this change must be made this fiscal year because of the financial state the system is in. We are a long way away from being able to build up required reserves in order to build a strong financial foundation, not only to survive, but to be positioned for growth. I would like to offer a possible solution, and this goes in line with your question, to assist the agencies through the end of the fiscal year. I have some public transportation funding available that I believe could be used to assist the agencies in the remaining 5 months of this fiscal year to help subsidize some of these trips. And Aaron and I can work together on that specific, so it would, in essence, decrease the rates. We would just be pulling it from a different funding source. So basically, this is just a brief summary of the current state of Gateway. We have a lot of hard work ahead of us, but I still feel strongly that we will be successful. And it's important to acknowledge the importance of continuing to provide transportation for our community. And ultimately, you know, our goal is to not have to cut trips, but to stabilize and increase trips. And I feel that that can be done and by having a close working relationship with the agencies. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Doherty.
Thank you for the efforts, because this is going to affect every agency.
Yes.
If I'm understanding correctly, one of the things that we're looking at is source of funding for these trips. If that source of funding is, as an example, with the health department, then they are able to bill those to Medicare or through DSS or somebody to fund that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Here in this situation, this is a county organization, so we're going to have to pick up the tab for that. Does it prevent you from having different rates for different agencies? Are you prevented from giving a rate to a citizen that's 65 years old versus one that's 50 years old? Are you prevented from doing that?
I don't believe I'm prevented from doing that, no, sir. And there can be different rates structured. So, for example, DSS Medicaid, that's kind of a different animal because of the funding. But they require certain things under DHHS regulations for additional services. We are required to run criminal background checks. We have other levels of responsibility. So, in that sense, we can increase that per mile rate to adjust that. So in saying that, it can definitely be looked at in terms of a tiered structure, as long as ultimately we are able to cover our expenses.
True. Considering the other sources of revenue that you have, out of the $29,613.19 that we need, how much of that do you feel like that you can get from other sources?
I believe that I could help subsidize probably maybe 70% of that, of those trips through the end of the year. And again, this is under the Rural Operating Assistance Program, and it would be under the Public Transportation Program, and it would have to fit under the guidelines. But I know that we would be able to work together and I'm sure it would fall under that.
So if I'm following the calculations here, around 20,000 of that you feel like you could get from other sources?
I believe so, yes.
So that would leave us around 10,000. I'm gonna round it up.
Please
Around
do.
10, please do, around $10,000 that we would need to fund it. Am I correct?
Yes.
The other comment I would like to make is, this is a guess, maybe I won't need this much, and then it would revert back to the county anyway.
Well, we certainly don't want to cut our transportation and our funding. We want to make sure that, you know, people are able to continue to go to the doctor and to the grocery store and so forth. And I'm just glad that we've got an additional source of revenue here in the short term, and hopefully we can work to find it on the long term. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman,
I don't know who was first. Everybody's raising their hand.
everybody's ready.
Well,
Ma'am,
go.
Yes, so when you say working together, or is this gonna be, coming from Gateway? Is this, when you're talking about working together to come up with money, is this from Gateway?
This is strictly under the Rural Operating Assistance Program grant. So there's funding that was awarded through the state based on a formula. So that's the pot of money, you know, that I'm talking about, that it's available, but it's only available for transportation. I can't use it to help me in my operations at all.
Right.
So it's very strict about how I can use those funds, but public transportation is, you know, we can work through those.
I think she means working together, we make sure they qualify. You know, we'd have to be communicating well
Yes.
to make sure that the
But
seniors qualify.
everything is will be coming through Gateway
Yes.
to you, is that right, to the senior center? Everything will be funneled through Gateway?
Correct,
This-
like she would still take the transportation requests and we
Yeah.
kind of look at the dynamics of those. And then based on, you know, we'll track, with the software I've got, I can track how much money has been spent. So we could have a cutoff point in the beginning, in the middle of the month to say, okay, this is where we're at. And so now let's change, you know, these rides that fall under this program to this other account code. So we would be able to track that very closely, on a daily basis even.
Follow it, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Mayor.
So if that's the case, let's say we can get some grants, and let's say we have $20-some thousand we need to come up with from the county. Since this is a gateway, coming through Gateway, have you had any communications with the city? Because the city and the county are in a partnership with Gateway. Has there been any communications with possibility of the city helping the county on a partnership, since we are in a partnership with the city on Gateway?
There haven't been discussions lately. I believe they were trying to pull a meeting together and, you know, also to discuss, I think, the transfer center as well. But that meeting did not occur yet. And the city, because it's under the FTA, it's really kind of a different animal with the grant funding on that side. Though this is strictly the rural part that we're talking about. But is there an opportunity for partnership? I'm sure that there is.
Okay, so I'd like to amend the motion of Mr. Bell's to table this until we can get an input from the city as to what their intentions are, because this is coming through Gateway, as he just said. Even though it's a grant, it's still coming through Gateway, which the county and the city are partners.
Mr. Chairman, you gotta understand how Gateway is set up, Mr. Mayor, or the city. And like she said, this is coming from the rural side of Gateway. This really has nothing to do with the city.
Well, are the rates in the rural section in my district, District 1, are the rates changing?
Well, for the rural program, this rate increase would be across all agencies.
Okay, so, let me get something straight. On the rural side, $3.82 a mile, is that what's gonna be charged?
Yes, per direct
If
mile.
you go to Eureka, for example, it used to be $8.50, is that right?
Correct.
For
For
Eureka?
a flat ride.
So what's that gonna do? That's gonna prohibit some citizens in the rural area from even using Gateway. Am I not correct?
I don't think your private pay rate was gonna be that way, was it?
Correct.
For agency rate is $3.82 a mile.
Right.
A senior who wanted to ride from Eureka, she wouldn't be charging that.
And the other thing is that we're looking, one more thing, is that we're looking at you mentioned a 256% increase. Is this gonna get Gateway to a break even? Is it gonna put them in a profit? What I'm asking is that sometimes in private industry, private business, 256% increase is a shock
Yes.
to anyone.
It is.
And what I'm asking is that, you know where this puts you financially. Could this have been done in more increments rather than 256% increase at one time? That's,
And I can understand the concern with that, definitely, but I believe, when I was hired, basically to fix something that was really broken, and the reason for that is because of years of underbilling, that if it had been addressed in prior years and addressed in increments along the way, it wouldn't be this shock sticker right now. But the financial state of Gateway is so bad right now that if we don't do something, we can't continue to operate. It's critical if we're going to continue to move forward and to have the system that we've got to be aggressive in addressing the rates. And that's why I was understanding the shock value of this, that it's important that we do work together and, use this other source of funding and come up with, look at on a go-forward basis, there are other grants that Aaron can apply for directly. There's a lot of other options out there that other systems use across the state. So I definitely understand the concern with the shock value. This is not a message that I wanted to bring at all, but I feel very passionate that we've got to be aggressive about addressing the problems, and it can work. It can work.
Commissioner Bell had mentioned that this is separate, but if is this grant going to help the Goldsboro citizens at all?
No, because the city side, under the urban, we're talking about a fixed route service only. So the kind of service that she needs for her clients are the what we provide on the rural side, which is the van service, and going outside of the city limits and bringing them back in. So the urban, under the FTA and the urban side, it's just a different animal in terms of, the amount of subsidies that, that's fully subsidized on that side. That's the problem I've got on the rural side, is only 26% subsidies I receive, and the rest is expenses that I've got to cover somehow.
I still don't see how you can separate. Mr. Parker, somebody refresh my memory. What's are we a shared percentage ownership with Gateway? Somebody refresh my memory on this. How is this balanced? How can we be called partners, but yet when it comes to something like this, we're saying it's rural. It doesn't affect. In other words, if we're partners, I don't understand how we can separate this. It's my issue. That's what I don't understand.
Gateway is the Goldsboro Wayne Transportation Authority, and that was established by a joint resolution or resolutions that were adopted both by the Wayne County Commissioners and the City of Goldsboro to run our transportation system in Wayne County, which, of course, Goldsboro is included in Wayne County. Because of the funding sources that through North Carolina Department of Transportation, it's broken down into the rural and the urban. And that's what Lynn was just telling you, how different monies come in different ways. So you've really got two businesses under one heading.
So there's not an equal percentage as far as 50/50, or it's whatever the expenses are for the rural versus whatever the expenses are for the city.
Right. At one time, the city was putting in a lot more money than the county was. The county was putting in substantial amounts, but there was a fund balance built up, and that fund balance for the county's side, and the county was not having to put in nearly as much. That fund balance basically is gone now. And so to keep it going, as Lynn has said, the county's going to have to put some more money in it.
When are you gonna know about these grants have you already applied for them, or is that something that takes months to do, or?
You mean in terms of the one grant that I was just speaking of?
Yes.
And that money is available right now today. So,
If I'm maybe understanding you, I think EdTap money is available today, but she mentioned there's money that could help me, and that we have not applied for. I'm not aware, like, what's the name or what kind of grant is it?
okay, so right now today, to get through to the end of the year, we have RGP funds available, and you also have your EdTap funds. So I can help with that $20,000 or so to get them through to the end of the year, based on how we code those passengers.
Is that what you meant with rural?
But in addition to that, there are, just like I had gone for the Job Access Reverse Commute grant, that's a competitive $360,000 two-year grant. That actually was approved, but I still have not got the executed contract. So I'm 7 months into the year without that available. That's going to give us another way that we can address some of this, going out to county limits and bringing them back into the city. So, that's a great thing, because that money's going to be available too. On a go-forward basis, there are, under that same program, there are competitive grants, just like the one I applied for, that Aaron has the opportunity, and WOC could go after those grants too, and then ask for assistance through the state for purchase transportation to increase their ridership. So that's where we're going to see the turning point. And I want to have the problem of, oh my gosh, I don't have enough vehicles to transport all these people, because we finally got the right model in place. So there are other areas, other avenues that we can explore. And we've got experience that in Johnston County, where the senior services went after a grant there and were awarded that, as well as the Johnston County Industries.
I think it's a good point, though. We need to do it now if we're going to try for July. So we'll get into that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Marty.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm not surprised at the rate increase, because when you were here last fall explaining this to us, you said something to the effect that to be able to make it, put it in the black, you would have to do a rate increase. And I thought I remembered asking then, would it be affecting the senior citizens? And you said it would affect the rate increase. So I'm not surprised by the fact that we need one, maybe just surprised by the amount. But here's the question I want to ask you. And first, Mr. Bell, I want to go on record as I'm supporting what you all have come in and say you needed, and I'm supporting that. But I just want to ask this question: as we look down the road, the same rate increase that will be incurred by the seniors going to the senior citizens and the ones that are supported by this organization, are there other people, other groups riding the bus that we are also in some way responsible for, that they will come back before us needing another increase to their budget so that they can afford ridership? Because I heard the help. I mean, you tell me, what are the other groups that you transport that will also be coming back to us, or coming to this board?
Well, we've got DSS is one,
Okay.
but the Medicaid transportation at this point isn't capped. So, I mean, they're not under the strict budget that Aaron is.
So we'll have to worry about them.
I don't believe so, no, sir.
Okay.
And
Except Work First.
Work First, right, that would be affected. But they use that, it's a very small, correct. So I don't see that being a big impact. All of the other agencies that we currently transport for are very, don't use the system that much, and that's one thing I want to change too. So as we turn this around, I want to increase that amount that we're doing. The only other agencies would be VR and WOC, and I think those are pretty much the players.
So we would expect it in the next week or 2 or 3 a month before the fiscal year ends, that because your rate increases are going up, and if I hear you say that, that rate increase is gonna affect everyone, not just the.
Correct, and
That
they've all been
organization?
notified of this, and again, the major impact is being felt by Aaron and WOC as well.
So you don't think that the other ones will be affected in the fact they would need to come before this board for additional funds?
I really don't know the answer to that.
Well, let me ask this, while I was back a little ways back, you said that you had funds that could offset the cost of what she needed now. Not to be argumentative, but was that discovered today, or was that something she knew all along? And would that increase that we asked for today been minimized if that $20,000 had been put in already and factored into the scenario?
Well, generally, the way that these funds are to be used is directly for Gateway to provide public transportation under certain guidelines. So that's what that pot of money is for. Now, what we have and my board has supported this approach to help lessen the burden on the agencies, is that we look at the trips that she needs provided and see which ones will fit under those guidelines. So, but what I'm doing then is I'm reducing my public transportation piece in order to assist some of those folks, which are technically public transportation.
Now, one last thing, if I heard you correctly, you said that the reason for the rate increase is to, you gave a litany of things, and one of them was to sustain and maybe to make it grow. And then a few minutes ago, you said that something that you're instituting which calls for more ridership, and you would need more buses.
Mm-hmm.
So, it always comes back to the chicken or the egg. I'm not sure if I'm using the right one, but, you make it bigger, it costs more. You leave it the same, you serve the people that you have. And if we're not careful, we'll get to a point where we'll serve less than the people we have. Is there some point there where it might be good to level off rather than to look for ways to increase it? Or are we
Well, absolutely.
underserving somebody by not increasing it? You tell me.
Okay, well, I think it's important that we stabilize the system first and, get us on solid ground. And as we do that and it starts to, we have the foundation, then we would want to go to the next step to say, okay, what are the other areas of demand that we're not serving? Because I'm sure there's more out there that need to be served that are not. And as I get that information, that data, then I would work with NCDOT and our consultants there in terms of saying, okay, here's our level of demand and here's how it's being projected. And along with that, I'm going to need to request additional capital. So I would then, at that point, have to time it with getting additional vehicles in the fleet. But that's going to be down the road until I can really get a solid foundation. It's just too early to tell. But do I believe there's more demand out there? Yeah, I do.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Pate.
Kind of jumped around a little bit, but I just want to clarify in my mind, and I missed this the other day, so bear with me. So we're talking about van service only to rural pickups. This is what we're talking about eliminating, is that correct?
There are some van riders in the city limits because they are either not on the city bus route or they have physical reasons that they couldn't walk to the bus.
The majority of these are going to be out in the county.
Majority are rural,
Is that
but there are
correct?
some.
Okay. Secondly, with the exception of the senior center, from my experience, the other state agencies have ways to recoup their dollars through other methods. So as far as I know, you guys are the only ones that are in this position.
Yeah.
And finally, with the help that you're going to be able to have through the grants, we're talking about an estimated a little less than $10,000. And I know that's kind of a moving target because you don't know. Is that where we are? Okay. I just wanted to clarify that in my mind because I missed the part about it being mostly rural because my district is rural. And I don't want those people to go without service, and then those people, especially those that are at risk over the weekends, of not having anything to eat.
That's right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I have a question to ask.
Mr. Booth.
Before we vote, does that mean you're gonna cut or not cut? If
If Lynn is able to give me the $20,000 worth of rides and the commissioners add the additional 10,000, I don't believe I will have to cut.
Okay, and I'd just like to just make a brief comment before we vote. According to the latest statistics, the U.S. government, or the U.S., the country, our country, is number 15th in the industrialized world as to how we treat our seniors. Now, that's sad, really. So I want you all to think about that, you know, as to what we do for our seniors. I mean, we are number 15th in the world.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Mayor,
I'd like to withdraw my motion.
okay. I have one question. You say you got 49 seniors. It's actually writing the rules side of Gateway. We've got 11 are from Mount Olive, which is 22%, 3 from Pikeville, 6%, 1 from LaGrange, 2%, 25 are from the city of Goldsboro, 51%, and 9 are Goldsboro but not considered city limits. If I had my,
Excuse me, those are my best estimates.
okay, but if I add my 51%, my 18%, we're looking at 69% in the city. And another question, you've got 1 from LaGrange. I'm hoping that that's a Wayne County citizen with a LaGrange address. Okay. That's all I've got.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Yes, sir.
Mr. King?
The very first thing I'd like to say is I applaud both of you for being solution-oriented. It's a breath of fresh air to see 2 department heads step out and instead of just coming and say, gimme, 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 like has been done so often in the past, and it's been just a stroke of a check. But you both have championed your position, your cause, and I applaud you for that. Yes, in September, you came before us, Ms. Lamberth, and you set your course, and it was strongly supported unanimously in this board. And I've looked at the GWTA transit report for the quarter, and I applaud you again for October, November, and December. Commissioners, I'm sure you've seen this and read it. It's the quarterly report we get each quarter, and it has the report from Gateway. And the next steps was to implement agency rate increase and to do several other things, and I applaud you for doing that. And we are seeing a little bit of blue sky. I appreciate that too. I did attend a meeting last week at the Senior Center. Ms. McAuliffe, she asked that the board have an emergency meeting, that the rate adjustment would cause some having a serious effect on supplying the food and the meals for a whole week, and it had certainly had an impact on her budget for the year, and I applaud her for acting so quickly and knowing and getting her board coming together, and her advisory board, and even the East Carolina Council of Governments, Tanya Cedars, stepping to the plate and coming to the county and for what we're paying in our dues to get this kind of help. Everybody working together in a collaborative way to find a solution to this. And not only that, we have a department head in Ms. Lamberth to see and recognize the situation as it was last week, and the collaboration through phone calls and through emails to find an answer to this issue. Now, moving on and fast forwarding to this day, all of a sudden Ms. Lamberth has come with a solution to lessen the burden. We can't deny that we are in this situation. Yes, it is expensive. And I think everyone knows that I've gone on record since '08 is that at one time I asked not for Gateway to receive a Band-Aid, not even a tourniquet, but a complete amputation. And I went on record at that a couple of years ago. And I'm glad to see that Gateway is moving in the right direction. I did ask the county finance director late last week to give me, in some eyes, a way of how the monies, for example, why would we all of a sudden turn and give it to the senior center when we could just maybe give it to Gateway? And I would like Ms. Holt to explain how she explained to me about why you wouldn't give it to Gateway because of the funding apparatus that they, or the funding different apparatuses that they use and what it would do to their bottom line, causing sort of a mix and something that maybe Commissioner Mayo, some of his questions about how the city and the county partner, and just maybe a few minutes and explain what you explained to me, Ms. Holt.
Well, Mr. Keenan asked me about funding Gateway versus giving the funds to the senior center. And because the DSS is able to, does not have a cap on their funds, I was just saying that, you know, if you gave all the dollars to Gateway, then it would be dispersed throughout everyone. But if you gave the dollars directly to the senior center, then it's going to help the senior center, but the Medicaid dollars will still be able to be drawn down from DSS at the increased rate that she's offering. So I think at this point, I'm not saying forever, but as of today, maybe it would be best to give it funds to the senior center.
And with that said, if I may just finish up, is that Ms. Lamberth has come with a solution that she can pay up to 70%. And if that, is that the correct percentage?
Yes.
And we have a balance, and we know what that balance is. And we're using some speculation about how to get us through the end of the year. But to pay up 70% and leave us with a balance of what Commissioner Pate mentioned, maybe $10,000. We're getting ready to go into our budget year, starting next month, February through June 1st, and we'll come back to this board sometime in the latter part of June to pass our budget. We can work through what you're going to work through for the next 4 months, and it gives us some great idea of you working together and having a more of an overall picture, getting into the weeds of how we to proceed. What really concerns me is the 50% increase. When you talk about 50% increases within 3 or 4 months, in particular in the middle of a budget year, that's alarming.
Now you're talking about medical rights?
That's alarming. If it were something happened at the end of the budget year, but right in the middle, you're about 4 months old, 5 months old, and then you're seeing that 50% increase. I think it's a good thing that all of this has come about this particular time. I know we learn in our valleys, but I think this is a good valley we're learning in right now. But I really applaud you both working together to get it right.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman.
Can we amend it?
Mr. Doherty.
Commissioner Bell, could I get you to amend your motion to include a budget amendment for $10,000 to fund that from the county?
Yes, if that's the consensus of the two of them out there, I'll do that.
Yeah, that's it. So you.
Yeah, I'll do amend,
Amend
yes.
your motion to, for us to fund the senior center.
Yes.
$10,000, and then Ms. Lambert will apply for the grant.
We've already have that funding.
You already have?
Yeah, it's physically sitting there right now.
Okay. Any other discussion? I have a motion on the floor.
Skip me out.
Mr. Parker.
When you're saying amending, are you saying you are substituting your motion now
Yes.
is to be $10,000?
Right.
You've withdrawn the
I
other
want to add
amendment.
something to that, but in case if they run short, that we will still pick up the balance, because we don't want the seniors to be left out in the cold.
Do we want to include that now, or?
What do you say, Mr.
Or they could come back later? I mean.
Right. As I understand the the intention of the motion is to make sure they don't have to cut any services right
Right,
now.
right.
And if this doesn't do it, then they'll come back to
Come
you.
back, yes, okay. Is that clear?
Mr. Pate,
Do we need a budget minute added into that too?
do we need
I need to say
A
this.
budget minute
Right,
added into that?
yes.
Miss-
Be a fund balance. Okay.
And also, when you mention cut services, I just want you to be aware, or for the newspaper, this means we are not going to cut any transportation to the meal sites. However, my board already voted no dances, no special occasions, that type of thing. So it's to maintain transportation to the meal sites.
Mr. Parker or Cindy, do y'all need to, we've amended that motion 2 or 3 times. Let's get it clear now.
It's, as I understand it, is to appropriate $10,000 to the senior center to maintain transportation to the meal sites for all seniors,
That's clear. Acceptable, Mr. Bell?
and an appropriate budget amendment to do that.
I withdrew my amendment.
The table, right.
Yeah, okay. Just want to make that clear.
Any other comments? All in favor of the motion, yet raise your right hand. That's unanimous.
Thank you very, very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you all.
Thank both of you.
$10,000 doesn't mean.
Get to you, sir.
We'll get to you.
Yeah, man, you won't think.
They should have done. I hope everyone up here get old.
I'll get over it. I'll make it up for. I'll make it up.
He's got some money.
That's what
Steve pulled him out of there. Maybe he's squeezed in some money out of it.
Well, I've lost 2 of them.
Might as well take a 3-minute break.
Let's take a 3-minute break.